Most early stage founders set their pricing once and never revisit it. The result? They leave significant revenue on the table, sometimes for years. In this episode, I'm talking to one of the pricing experts in Europe, the co-founder of ValueShift. He has worked with over 400 companies on pricing and monetization. And his conclusion after 150 pricing studies is clear. In 90 to 95% of the cases, SaaS companies could charge more, in some cases even much more. In this episode, we get into how you move from guessing to systematic guesstimation, what that means for your business model, your value metrics, and why the question isn't just how much, but what are you actually charging for. Plus, we look at the question on everyone's mind right now. Where is AI pricing heading over the next few years? Without further ado, let's go. Kris, so great to have you around.
Thank you very much for having me. I'm super excited for today's conversation.
Before we dive into kind of some of your work and the fascinating topic about SaaS pricing or technology pricing, not just AI, I'd like to invite you, to pronounce your name, because we said it's an invitation for disaster if I try it. I did it before and I failed badly.
Not that bad, not that bad.
But you can do it much, much better, especially when you see this written name. It's kind of intimidating. Anyway, so just share the wisdom of how to pronounce your name properly and providing some background, because you are one of the players and domain experts, I would say, in Europe. So I'm super, super thrilled to dive more into that fascinating topic with you.
So starting with the introduction, my name is Krzysztof Szyszkiewicz. I have this running joke with my family that my parents didn't expect me to do the international career, hence the combination of the name and the surname. But I go by Kris, and thank you very much for the very nice introduction. Indeed, me and company ValueShift that I co-founded, we are specializing in pricing, in monetization. That is like very interesting topic nowadays for technology companies.
Perfect. So let's dive into it, because I was wondering, because I have a lot of clients between roughly 1 and 10 million, and I would say there are two phases about talking about prices. So one thing is kind of, let's get a solid foundation, because it also kind of refers to business model and some other big decisions. And then there is, I think, a tipping point where everything needs to be a bit more professionalized. So looking at the kind of classical customer journey or buyer journey about your clients, what is a good start to think properly about pricing?
First of all, I think what is very important here is that pricing is a process. That we frequently think like that, pricing is one type of an exercise, exercise. We will do it once a year, once every 2-3 years, and we are done. I think that depending on your size and how important the model is for you, it should align with the advancements that you should take when it comes to pricing. So if you're at the very early in your process, I think that those are the times of the guesstimation. And this is a very important thing. There is a very big difference between guesstimate and guess, right? Gut feeling versus guesstimating. So at the very beginning, if you're from 0 to 1, 1 to 2, I think that, trying to understand what are your costs and what is the margin that you want to have, trying to understand what is the acceptability of the market for your pricing, taking into consideration your competitors should be the second data point that you're taking into consideration, and then trying to evaluate what value you're bringing to your clients is the third data point. And when I mean the value, try to think in terms of a profit equation. So profit equals price times volume minus costs, right? So try to think, how do you actually influence the profit from the revenue perspective and cost perspective, and try to estimate it, how much profit you're bringing to your clients. If you have these 3 data points, frequently over the course of the workshops, when it comes to the price tags or a price range that you should take, cost is good, then competition is better, and best is in terms of the value. Very simply down to earth in terms of a price corridor, price tag corridor, so to say. On the other hand, the second thing is the model, right? So which is much more important at the very beginning. So how you price, what is your core value metric, should be aligned with acceptability of your clients, just so they accept being charged for this particular thing when it comes to the value metric. And of course, the more scalable it is, the better it is. Of course, there are some other KPIs that you should take into consideration. Predictability for your clients, value alignment. So the more you sell, the more value you produce. Acceptability on the market. So if 95% of the market is charging for one particular thing, most likely challenging the status quo at the very beginning before your product is like maybe not like hopefully it is, but there is a big chance that this is not the best product on the market. Most likely, following the crowd, at least for the very beginning, might be important. So taking these things into consideration should give you much better. It should give you a head start against your competitors who are just guessing the price, right? So guesstimating, there is like tons of the research that, managers are doing better decisions by having the data, right? So I think that this is for like at the very beginning, you're starting from 0 to 1. Those are the things that you should take into consideration.
So one thing as kind of a key takeaway is if you have kind of a competitive market and you have existing pricing models or business models, do not try to reinvent the wheel if kind of your competition is, let's put it very plain, SaaS seat model pricing. And if you have a kind of an entirely different model, it might cause some friction.
Might cause some friction as long as the market is like, if you want to like challenge the market, if you really have like this feeling that, I will give you an example. So lately I was working in the job boards market, right? This is a pretty crowded market and driven by the performance marketing, right? So you need a lot of marketing assets in order to be visible, right? It's a marketplace supply and demand, but with a SaaS angle to it because you also have subscriptions there, services, etc. So there was a newcomer to the market and they really had a very good product. And they were thinking, okay, so how do we even compete so the HR recruiters are putting the job offers on our market? So we were thinking, okay, following the crowd, so charging per number of job offers that you're putting on the marketplace might be counterproductive because why would they pay for something that has not that enough views, right? That doesn't have some traction. So what is a good model there, right? So we've been thinking, what if instead of charging for number of job offers, we would charge for numbers of CVs that we are receiving through this job board, right? So instead of job offer, it's a CV that you received, which makes it too good to be true of an offer for the HR person because they can submit the job offer on the job board for free and they are paying only when the value is received, right? So when the CV appears. So if you're in a very, and I don't want to play it depends, right? What you have said in 95% of the cases, 90, maybe 80% of the cases, let's put it that way, should work, right? So following in terms of the model, thinking in terms of acceptability. So is my audience like used to paying for such stuff can be a good thing. For the other 20s, when you have like super cool product, maybe you have a lot of investment and you have investors that like give you a big runway. If the market is super crowded and you need to challenge the status quo, then take the other way. But 80% of the cases, I would say that, yeah, maybe a bit boring, but that would be a go-to.
Yeah, and it totally resonates with me because I also like the different perspectives on this. So if you'd like to kind of go aggressively into the market and really have kind of, it's a kind of risk reward ratio, I would say. So do something differently, like you were saying. Okay, classically you would charge by either listing or kind of amount and some contingents, or you kind of basically have almost kind of a first indication of value attached to it, because once I get the VCs, which should be relevant, but either way, so it's kind of a significantly different model. So I really like that one. On the other hand, I think it also, I would say, and based on experience, it strongly depends on the innovation openness in some industries. So if you are competing in more kind of traditional industries where you have kind of existing business models and pricings, it could be, very curious about your opinion, but it could be much more risky in more traditional industries to be kind of bold and try to reinvent the wheel, or to have kind of a sharp positioning, a very strong focus on value, but keeping kind of this component about your offering pricing relatively stable.
Think of and just to back your point, right? Think in terms of a CRM, right? Can you imagine that CRM is charging for something else than users, right? I mean, most likely 95% of your audience will be migrating from the competitors, right? So they want to see something that they feel used to. Of course, the CRM market, lately Pipedrive introduced couple of limits, maybe, just maybe, I don't have any internal knowledge to that, but maybe they're testing how usage-based pricing would have performed in the CRM space. But yeah, in that type of market, to put your, to back your point, yes, of course, right? I can give you a framework that I use with a very early stage companies to think of the model in terms of a competition. We are using our classic jobs to be done framework.
Nice.
When we are comparing jobs to be done versus the price, right? So you can do the better job and you can charge more. If you're charging more, you are trying to get underserved clients. You can do better job and charge less, maybe in the different model, and then you are trying to get the whole market, right? Because this is like a really hot offer.
Yeah.
But most likely you will be doing worse job than your competitors because you are just starting, which means that you can charge less and then you are trying to get overserved market, or you can do worse job and charge more. And this is only if you have a very specific advantage over the market. So for example, you're at the financial services invoicing and you have some nitty gritty advantage that some local law and you have some API to government something and this is very much needed. But in principle, your product is not as good as the gigantic invoicing products, right? So I mean, those are I would say that this is the matrix that can help you position yourself versus competitors in terms of a price.
I like that. I'm a huge fan of jobs to be done, and I have never linked it to pricing. Totally makes sense, especially if you have a.
That's my role.
No, it's great. That's already the highlight of this episode. Potentially more to come, which gives me another kind of hint, because a lot of the questions I get is quite often. So when you talk about the impact, whether it's kind of uplift or it's kind of cost reduction, and so what you say, what is kind of another easy proxy to evaluate? So am I selling too cheap if I'm aware, or if I can prove some measurable value?
So then we are moving, and maybe I can link it to the initial question. So then we are moving the companies that are a bit bigger, right? So once you already have some traction, you have some data to analyze. The first thing that I see is that if you just missed the first point, if you are already at that phase and you didn't guesstimate it, but you just guessed it, most likely you are underpriced. We conducted more than 150 studies on pricing. Myself, I've worked with more than 400 companies, and I would say 95% of the cases we are increasing the average price. So there is a very big chance that you are underpriced. How you can see that, right? So the first proxy to understand if you're delivering more value than you price it for is when nobody is negotiating the price / your conversion is super high, right? So then of course you can go with fancy research, but what you can do, you can just increase the price and see if the conversion drops or you have more negotiations. The second proxy can be too many people are choosing the most expensive option. So if too many people are choosing the most expensive option, most likely, you are in general too cheap, right? So I would say that this could be a good proxy in terms of value versus price. Second thing that you can do, and then maybe for clients like 1 to 5, what you can do, you can already talk to your clients, existing clients, in terms of the value that you deliver, right? If you just ask them about the value, most likely the answer will not be that good. So I would really prepare a good questionnaire, and what we are asking a lot is what has changed since you are using our product, right? In terms of headcount, in terms of how, I don't know, they are charging for hours, whatever, how many conversion you have, how much conversion you have, etc., etc. And then during these calls, we are trying to estimate the value with them, right? So we are gathering the inputs, what has changed, how it used to be, how much did it cost in the past, how much it costs right now, and then we have Excel in the backend, and we're trying during this call to navigate, estimate the value that you are delivering to them, right? And this can be the proxy that is like client driven. Nevertheless, there is also, and then a bit bigger companies, you already have more data, let's say you're 2, 3, 4, 5 million ARR already. I think that then it's a good time to run the primary research on your prospective clients, because there is a chance that you are far beyond your pricing corridor, and unfortunately you will not learn that from your currently existing clients because they are too biased to tell you what price they can be, right? So if you ask me, what should be the price of X, I would go like, I have this X, I am anchored, so more or less I will get like 20% more, 20% less, maybe 30, maybe 40. Just in case you are like 2, 3, 4, 5x too cheap or too expensive, you will never learn that from currently existing clients. So I would say that, from the very early on, when it is a guesstimation towards analyzing your internal data and running interviews with your current clients, trying to, digest it and take some actions based on it, up until running a primary research on your prospective clients. That can be an input both for the price tag itself, that is important, but still with regards to the model, which I think is even more important.
Yeah, I like that perspective. So I think existing customers are great to basically build up the foundational model, which sounds more fancy than it is actually, but it's kind of what are the value driver and or cost driver you can really influence. And then still they are biased, because it's always hard to charge existing customers more and significantly more. But with this kind of unfair knowledge, for me, it's kind of a classic customer journey where you start at the discovery and with an open mind and try to more and more assess their way of thinking for the new prospects. So am I getting these kind of value driver and or cost drivers verified, and then do kind of a classic return on investment calculation? And then I think it's more important, what is then a fair value, or what is a great kind of return on investment to actually make the new buying decision to have then lifting up the prices. Can you follow me on this?
Yes, I can follow. I think I understand what you mean. And I think that, there can be another point beyond like just discussing it with the clients, but actually also trying to understand how they are using it in the real life scenarios, right? Because at some point, your clients can be very nice to you. They can find your product very valuable, but at the same time you can see usage patterns that counter what they are saying. So I would say that if you really want to have the good understanding what is the maximum value that your current clients can take, or price that can take, and you would like to extrapolate this on the new clients, look also on the usage data, the frequency of usage, right? The more frequent they are using the product, most likely the more anchored you are in the bloodstream of the companies, which means that your pricing power is quite strong, right? If this is just anecdotal usage, most likely, pricing is not your biggest challenge. Of course, there are caveats to it, right? But as a general rule of thumb, I would say that customer interviews plus usage data can give you a full perspective.
Ein kurzer Hinweis in eigener Sache. Am 11. Juni werde ich persönlich in Berlin sein. Doch nicht einfach so, sondern bei der Go-to-Market-Veranstaltung des Jahres. Julius und Dom vom Artist-Team haben ein neues Format erschaffen. Revenue Royal. 300 handverlesene Gäste, Invite Only. Inklusive sind Hands-on-Workshops, ein Gala-Dinner im Tipi am Kanzleramt und eine Afterparty. Im Vordergrund steht der Austausch mit ausgewählten Führungskräften aus Vertrieb, Marketing und Customer Success. Mit Funky Bond werden wir einen eigenen Tisch haben und du kannst dich bei uns exklusiv für einen Platz bewerben. Alle weiteren Infos und die letzten Tische findest du unter revenue-royal.de. Ich hoffe, wir sehen uns spätestens am 11. Juni in Berlin und persönlich. So talking about rule of thumbs, and especially in early days, because I to share a real example with you. So right now I'm working on with a company. They are offering basically an analysis to optimize costs, very vaguely speaking. And now we are kind of exploring, so what is kind of the share of potential savings we can get and ask by the client? So, and what gets quite handy is that we get kind of 20 to 30% out of the existing savings. So I am not talking about kind of theoretical savings, but really kind of measurable, supported, backed by the customer savings. So if we able to save them on a regular basis, not just as a one-time fee, kind of 100K, we could charge them on an annual basis between 20 and 30. Would you say this is kind of also backed with your kind of data as a broad corridor, or do you see other angles, or how would you approach this?
So look, this is much more a model discussion than the price tag discussion.
All right.
Because what I see a lot is that not only you need to prove that you are delivering the value, but this value needs to be tangible. So it needs to be easy to explain, and clients should be just like ready to admit that this is value that you are producing, but also how much needed you are in order to produce this value. It's called irreplaceability. Sorry for like, how hard it is to replace you, right? Because, if you're creating 20K of value, but there are like 10 other providers could easily do the same. I mean, then charging them 50% of the value you're generating might be again counterproductive and not really acceptable for the client. So I would like to incentivize all the listeners, and this is like beyond the size, no matter. And I was doing that for 500 million ARR and 5 million ARR companies, like understanding the tangibility of your value and how hard it is to replace you are two good measures. And why I think it's about the model, right? And not about the price. Because like imagine in the past we were charging on premise, right? So a value that we were producing was not the tangible because client was operating this on their premise. And again, which means that the tangibility of the value was quite low, right? Then we moved into the cloud and we are operating our software and client is using our software. So, still like we are a bit more tangible. Then if you think in terms of usage, you are only paying when you are using the software, then it is tangible because, if the value wouldn't have been tangible, client wouldn't use that. Then you can charge for output, right? So in your case, maybe for some processes optimized, right? When there is a cost cutting, so it's even more tangible. And then you can pay for success, right? And this is like commission-based model. So you are only charging where the process has been optimized, right? So when the effect has happened, and what is more important, when the success has happened, right? So I would like to add a bit more color to what you've put, right? Because just having a very straightforward answer should be if it should be 10%, 20 or 50% of the value really depends on how much risk you are taking in terms of how you are charging. The more risk you are taking, the more value you can charge. From my perspective, companies that were the most successful are capable of charging 40%, but this was back in time, not only in software, because like right now for the last 5 years, I've been working mostly with the software. Nevertheless, before I was working also with big consultancy, and like value-based pricing was a very important component of our work as well, right? So in software, what we are seeing through the research is that like the most successful companies with commission-based model are capable of charging 20 to 30%. What is very important is that with commission and with value share, you can boost it, right? So imagine that faster time to value, right? So you are taking 20%, 30% of the value that you are generating, but instead of conducting this service, or like making it happen, onboarding customer, instead of doing it in 60 days, you will doing it in 14 days. Okay, so maybe instead of taking 20%, we'll take 25. And I would highly, just for inspiration, I would highly incentivize everyone to look at the company that is the most advanced in the software world, in B2B, by the way, which might be very surprising to many, but it's booking.com, right? So booking.com is working with hotels, right? So it's a B2B relationships and they are taking commissions, right? But the toolkit that they have to increase the commission is very big. You were reserving the hotel yourself, most likely a couple of times in your life. You might have seen that sometimes you need to pay by credit card at the hotel. Sometimes the credit card is being charged when you are doing the booking at booking.com. This is not a free of charge for hoteliers, right? So just for you to know, right? And many different things, right? That, some hotels are visible at the top. It's not a coincidence, right? This is like, a value booster that Booking is giving for their clients, which increases the commission. So, this is how I would think about this. So tangibility of the value, irreplaceability of your solution. If you need to benchmark, best software companies in SaaS, in AI are taking 20 to 30% of the value, but they have output or commission-based models, right? Sexy lately, like ChargeFlow, right? With chargebacks, 25%. They are taking, but the risk on them is quite high.
Yeah, I like the extra dimension. And then, of course, I didn't dare to, or I would have been disappointed if you would have given me just the straight answer, yes, 20 or 30%. But I really like the multiple dimension. And another highlight for me is kind of time to value. It's kind of risk reduction and time to value as a kind of another angle to how likely is it that I get that value? That's part of normally, I would say, kind of classic sales process, but also to show, okay, how fast are you getting now the results and now what could be the outcome in terms of speed? It's kind of a different dimension. So I'm really, really happy and pleased. So,
and then you can, differentiate, right?
Yeah.
And this is quite nice because giving your salespeople, or if you're like transparent pricing PLG, I mean, you can just give an options to the client because, if you go, and this is, it's funny because it all has been on the market for quite a while, is the context-based pricing. So charging people by the context that they are currently in. If you are in a hurry, price is not that much of a problem. If you can wait, I mean, you can be picky because you can look for different providers. You can think, how much you are willing to spend for that. So this is nothing new. It's very logical when you think about this. And in general, pricing is quite logical. It's much more science than art if you think about this. But there is another art component to it for sure.
All right. So time is flying by. It's so short while with you. So let's tackle the last topic because AI pricing is in the air, and let's do an outlook. What is happening? And I know that you have one also for me kind of a new idea when it comes to agility, and I think it's picking up on the context side. So let's have a brief outlook. So what are the major trends and what are kind of your beliefs? What will change or will build up more traction in the upcoming years?
So for next to no, I'm kidding. So for let me do it on the very high level. So if you look at the market in general, AI is generating a lot of costs, right? We've been thinking like 2 years ago that AI will be like the Moore law, which is basically saying that the more people are using it, the cheaper it will become. It's not applied yet on the AI. Maybe it will never be applied. So it generates costs. Number one. Number two, they are unpredictable. So you have seen on LinkedIn that we've spent so much money on credits, blah blah blah. Where I always have in the back of my head, the EBIT when I see it. But this is like one component. The second component is what the AI leaders are saying, right? Sam Altman. We are moving in the fast fashion technology era, right? So we see that in general number of solutions, there is an increase in number of solutions. It's much easier to build the solutions. What does it mean, right? If we want to protect our EBITs, if you want to protect our margins, as long as you are not next Clay, Lovable, OpenAI, blah 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 stuff like this, for 99.9%, you are not next Lovable, right? I wish you were, but most likely you're not. So you need to be a bit more down to earth, right? What does it mean? That you need to be at some point you need to be profitable, right? At some point, right? Maybe in 10 years, maybe in 15 years, maybe tomorrow. But I mean, this is the end game in business, right? At the end. So when you think about this, if you take these two things into consideration, I think that the next thing in terms of pricing with AI is that we will see that software will be very like the monetization principles, pricing principles that applies to B2C, to retail, will also come to software, which means that pricing agility and your capabilities to adjust your price in time will be very much needed. And right now we are all pushing for long LTVs, yearly contracts, 2-yearly contracts, 3-yearly contracts, yada, yada, yada. Nevertheless, if you look from the backend perspective and how costs are growing, this is not sustainable in the long term. So if the situations will remain like that, and if your model is not usage-based scalable, you need to have a pricing agility. And then I said that most of the things have been invented so far. And then if you look in the classic B2B beyond software relationships, if you're in CPG industry, if you're selling to retails, most likely, if you're in automotive, you have your list prices that are valid for 2 months or a quarter, right? And then you're adjusting this list prices. We or you in software, if you are lucky, you are adjusting your prices on the yearly basis. Now imagine that you need to, because costs are there, adjust your prices on the monthly basis, on quarterly basis, right? So your customers need to get used to it, and you need to get the capabilities in order to do that. If not, and if you don't have a gigantic financing, the situation might be quite hard for you. So, this is just a sneak peek. Most likely I would go on and on, but this is how I see it, right? That the pricing agility, your capabilities of adjusting the price, your capabilities of having scalable models will be inevitable. It will be a must. It won't be nice to have as it was for a couple of years. It will be a must.
Great finish, I would say, and it is exactly what I was looking for, some extra inspiration, and it totally makes sense from a cost perspective. So I'm very curious if we see decreasing unit economics with AI, and or how this become a trend that we adapt pricing on a quarterly basis, and what does it mean for organizations, for sales, for the entire go-to-market motion. So that was insightful, refreshing in short while. Kris, thanks for having you. And just as a kind of closing remark, you are pretty strong on LinkedIn. We'll link your homepage. Anything else you would like to share with the audience if they want to reach out with you?
Always work on pricing. This is like a closing remark. Pricing is a process, and then of course, if you want to reach out, I don't want to say I live on LinkedIn. I also live on Slack, but I am pretty responsive, and I'm trying to democratize pricing knowledge. So if you're interested in getting more insights, I try to be active and valuable, of course.
All right. Nothing to be added. Have a wonderful day, and let's see each other soon.
Thank you very much. Have a good one.
Bye-bye. Thank you very much for tuning in. Each week, I have the pleasure of engaging with exceptional founders, industry experts, and investors to discuss the ups and downs of early stage growth. I primarily focus on B2B and Gen AI startups progressing from 1 million to 10 million ARR. We share valuable lessons and best practices for scaling quickly and efficiently. If you enjoyed this episode, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Feel free to give me a feedback on LinkedIn or give it a thumbs up. I can't wait to see you in the next one.